So I just had some fun with some of the men in our church. We did a camp out. And oh, by the way, before I mention that, Tanya was just now saying, encouraging you to raise your hands. And some of you maybe have wondered, maybe that's not something you're used to doing while we're singing and worshiping God. But she said, that's the universal sign of surrender, right? Right? Hands raised up. I'm surrendering to God and to God's will. And no matter where you go, even if you don't speak the language, if there's a policeman behind you, I'm surrendering. Oh, hey, I'm surrendering, right? So the other thing too that some people might ask is why do we always automatically stand when we sing and worship? That's just been part of our church culture. We just always stand when we're singing and worshiping. And again, for us, one of the things that means is it signifies a readiness, right? So a stand that women matter to God. Even if you feel like you don't, as a woman you do, and the poor matter to God. And sometimes they feel like because I'm poor, I don't have any real dignity. This is that Monday night training that we're doing when helping hurts. We learn that a big aspect of poverty is just that people feel worthless and valueless. But in God's eyes, we see from the book of Ruth, they're not. God does not forget those who are poor, the immigrant, those who are the outsider, those who are the foreigner, those who are looked down upon maybe because they look different or act different or have a different accent or don't understand the cultural norms, the cultural kind of ways that we do things, and so they don't feel like they fit in. Well, they matter to God. And so we're going to wrap this up now this week and next week, and we're going to talk about the powerful people. Because we've been talking about those who have a lower status or tend to typically have lower status. But then does that mean that God only cares about those who are of lower status? What about those who are the powerful? Do they matter? And so I want to finish off by saying, yes, they matter too. We're not trying to say that those who are powerful and have power and are the boss, the one who's the boss, the one who's the big kahuna, the grand poobah, El Presidente, right? Whatever titles we want to give to the people that we look at them like, oh man, he or she has all the power, right? And so then sometimes there's this attitude like of some people, not us at Mountain Vista, but of some that look down on somebody just because they have power, just because they have achieved a lot, that maybe there's somehow they got there by stepping on other people. There's that assumption that the only way you could have gotten to that point is you stepped and climbed over other people, and you've got to be corrupt, and you know what I mean? And so let's address this at like, all right, even the powerful matter to God. And so as I'm thinking about this, and I'm looking at Ruth chapters 3 and 4, and I'm preparing for today, some of you already know because I shared this with you, like I had to change my message all at the last minute because I'm like, there's just too much here. There's just too much that I'm wanting to talk about here. And I'm realizing there's a natural divide, and I got to make this part 1 and part 2, all right? So part 1 and part 2, next week part 2, and this is our finish up our book of Ruth. But do the powerful matter? Yes. The powerful matter, and there's 2 groups of powerful people. The first one I was kind of overlooking, and you might do this too. See, next week we're going to talk about Boaz, and he's the obvious power player. He's the landowner. He's the guy that everyone's looking to as the power player in all of this. But again, we're overlooking the power that Naomi and Ruth had. See, we've been looking at them as people of low status who probably didn't think a lot of themselves, and others didn't look at them as powerful people. But let's not forget that they did have power. These were ladies who had figured out that although they were in subordinate positions, had power. And what we tend to do is we look at the people who are in charge, El Presidente, and we think that they have all the power, and me, the subordinate, have no power, and that's wrong. They don't have all the power, and I don't have no power. That sounds like bad English, but that's what I mean. I'm not at zero power, and they're not at 100% power, right? In other words, we tend to overestimate them and underestimate us, and today I want to address that. Like, let's think of all of the times when we're in the subordinate position, we're the assistant. We're the ones serving the person. We're the vice president, not the president, right? We're the person that's underneath of the person with all the power, or we're at just kind of the commoner level, and yet we forget that there are times where we have power that we can leverage, that we can trade, we can cash it in. We can use it for God's glory, and God has given that to you. But if you underestimate that, or if you overlook that and you don't realize that you have the power, then it just goes to waste. You're living your life and you're assuming you've got nothing to offer, and you're missing opportunities. So that's what we're looking at today, is we're going to be looking at Naomi and Ruth, who were subordinates. And we're not going to make the mistake of believing that they didn't have power. We're going to see that they did. And I was thinking of this as I was getting into this, that my parents are the perfect example in my life of what we're talking about. My dad, from the time that I can remember, I barely remember when I was a little kid in Washington when we lived there, but I remember better when we moved to Arizona. And the reason we moved from Washington to Arizona is my dad took a position, this is going to impress you, he took a position as the vice president of administration at Southwestern College. Doesn't that sound impressive to you? Well, let me tell you, it was no great promotion for him. The job he had in Washington, it just like a cubicle office job, was probably, it paid more and had more significance, because this little college called Southwestern, which is the college that Tammy and I met at and is our alma mater, was only 200 students back then. Can you imagine going to a college with only 200 students? And it was this ugly, dusty, dried out campus at 26th Street in Cactus. And we got there and we're like, Dad, what did you do? Like, why did you take this job? Like, this is just a dumpy little school. But because it was a Bible college and a Christian college, he had really prayed about it with my mom, and they really felt God leading them to come and do it as a ministry. And again, like, my dad wore so many hats. Like, that first summer, we're all helping clean apartments for students to come to college, right? And my dad, half the days, was out with a shovel and broom, and he's doing like construction type stuff. And the good thing is my dad was a construction guy. He was great. He would build houses on the side when we were in Washington, and he was just a very industrious, hardworking guy. He'd grown up with a farm with his parents. They had a farm on the side growing strawberries. And so he's in this job, and there were many years, although they always had a president, or there was multiple presidents he served under, because he was there for years, but he was always the subordinate. But I watched at how much influence and power he had to not only influence the direction of the college and to help them to grow and to help them be financially healthy and sound, but just how much that everything, like so many students thank him to this day for how much that he meant to them. And so I've got this really wonderful picture of him and my mom, who for many years was the pastor's secretary. And a lot of us know, now they call administrative assistant, but a lot of us know you want to get something from the church or from an organization. A lot of times, don't go ask the guy in charge. Become friends with the administrative assistant, right? Get to know the secretary. A lot of times they can kind of work it out for you. If they like you, they can get things worked out. That's the way my mom was. She was extremely influential as the pastor's secretary. And so she's in this subordinate role, but highly valued by the pastor, doing just a lot of important stuff for the church. And so I'm reminded from their example, and from like even the military example I shared earlier on, is like sometimes, even though the master chief is going to salute the second lieutenant, that second lieutenant has got to learn from the master chief. Because that second lieutenant knows nothing about leading men. He knows nothing about getting into a conflict and how he's going to respond and handle that. And he's got to learn all kinds of stuff from that master chief, even though he's his subordinate. And so as the subordinate, you've got power. You've got influence. All right, so if you're wondering, okay, do I, as a subordinate, have power and influence? Ask yourself these questions. Number one, who respects me? Who respects me? If there's people that respect you, guess what? You have power, because they look up to you. You're an influence in their life. The politicians today, it's political season. What are they trying to do? They're trying to gain influence. They're trying to get you to like them, right? They want you to respect them. The word that is sometimes used is this is referent power, right? This is a power that you gain because you're liked, because you're respected, because you're admired by other people. Number two, does anybody sympathize with me? Sometimes we look at victims in the news and we hear this tragedy that happened to somebody, and something bad happened and they're victimized and it's a sad story. But then we realize that because someone took a video of it and it's now like got 1 million views, that this victim, although it's sad that they were a victim, all of a sudden has a huge support behind them. Like they got this army of people ready to come help them and come to their defense and give to their GoFundMe. And like, oh man, this person that nobody knew and was anonymous, who's been victimized, suddenly has all kinds of power. And they can talk and share their story, and people want to know it, and they got power now all of a sudden. So maybe you've got people that sympathize with something that's happened in your life. That's a form of power that you have. Number three, are people fearful or ignorant? Have you noticed that there's something about people that are fearful or ignorant that you're not? That gives you some power. Even though you might feel like you don't have a lot to offer, maybe you're real smart or you're not fearful of something. The person I think of on this one is Warren Buffett. Like before he was well known and a famous stock trader and multi-billionaire, when he was just starting out, the one thing about Warren Buffett is he wasn't afraid. When everybody else was panicking and afraid and they were selling, what was he doing? He's buying because he's not afraid, right? He was smarter and less fearful than others, and that gave him power. Now he's a powerful man because he's one of the richest men on earth. But back then, he had figured it out. I'm not going to be fearful, and I'm going to take advantage of this to my benefit. Number four, ask yourself, do I have anything to bargain with? And you might just feel like you're a nobody, but all of a sudden we see the story of the Hollywood Writers Guild that came together and went on strike. Ben and I, when we were down at Universal Studios a few months, we saw them walking the picket line, right? Well, unions sometimes remind us that if you gather together with others, even though you don't feel like you have power, and you got all these other people that are more powerful than you and they're making all the money, and all of a sudden by coming together with others, okay, we've got some power now. Or there's other things that other ways that you might find out that you can bargain. You've got some sort of chip that you didn't realize. Number five, last one that I thought of is, do I have any sort of special knowledge? And some people use the word for this, expert power. Like, are you an expert in something? Because you might be low on the totem pole at work, like just a secretary or just an accountant, right? Some sort of low position. But if you know something about the organization, or you know something about the people that are, sometimes we call this the whistleblowers. Do whistleblowers have power? They do. You know something happened, you bring that to light, all of a sudden you've got some power even over the most powerful people in the company. So you know something, or maybe it's just that you have like special training. And so you, again, back to the military example, that you might know more than your superior, and that gives you power in those situations. So let's think about two. I want to give these examples before I move back into Ruth here, of two examples from Matthew. We 2 weeks ago talked about Matthew's genealogy in Matthew chapter 1. And in that genealogy, it's fascinating that he doesn't just list the men, because normally in that culture, if you're given a genealogy in ancient times, you would just list the men. Well, he lists mostly men, but he inserts some women into that. And let me just remind you of two of the women in that, because these women would seem insignificant at first glance, but they had subordinate power. The first one I want to mention is Tamar. Tamar is mentioned in this, and if you want to go and read the story, go back to Genesis and read all about this. It's fascinating stuff. It's definitely not PG. This is like rated R stuff. This is real life. Like the Bible doesn't pull any punches. Sometimes when in the Old Testament was talking about real life. And it talks about Tamar. And Tamar would seem at first glance like she doesn't have any power at all. She's a nobody. In fact, Judah, who is the clan leader, the tribe leader from the tribe that Jesus eventually would come from, the tribe that David would come from. So this guy is a patriarch. And this guy has lots of power in his position. And he judges that Tamar needs to be stoned because she had he says, she's played the prostitute. She's been the harlot. We're going to stone her. Well, Tamar says, I've got a little bit of knowledge here that I want to share with you that the rest of you maybe didn't know. And she's ready to blow the whistle on Judah on here. So she's in this position to be able to negotiate and to be able to have some power and some knowledge that she uses, like, hey, don't kill me, because if you try to do this, I'm gonna tell everybody what you did. And if you read the story, Judah has to admit at the end, you're actually more righteous than I. So she boldly faces down with this powerful man, and we see the power that she had. Another person in that we read there in Matthew chapter 1 is Rahab. Rahab from the city of Jericho almost seems like her last name was the prostitute, because every time we read her name, it's Rahab the harlot, Rahab the prostitute, right? So here we have a foreigner who is doing this illicit, lifestyle, this immoral lifestyle. And so she has no status where she's from, and certainly in another country, she's not going to have any status. Yet she negotiates with these spies from Israel that come to Jericho and says, listen, to use a legal term, a quid pro quo, you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. I'll help you, you help me. And so she helps the spies, and they promise, she negotiates with them, by the way, when you guys come and destroy our city, you've got to protect myself and my family. And so her family was saved. And so, again, demonstrates the power that she had normally would have been perceived as someone without power. All right, so let's get back to the story of Ruth here. Naomi, let's be reminded, has a heart for her daughters. It says in Ruth chapter 1, verses 8 through 9, that Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, go back each of you to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness as you have shown kindness to your dead husbands and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband. In other words, she's lost everything. She's lost her husband, she's lost her sons. She has like nothing in this world left. She's got no hope for the future. Like, there's not even like something she's banking on, oh, I hope this works out like this. She's got no hope. She's got nothing. The only thing she's got left are these two daughters-in-law to kind of keep her company and maybe to help her out in some way, some manner. And she even tells them, it'd be better if you guys went back home, because if you just stick around with me, your life is going to be as miserable as mine. She cares about her daughters so much that she would say, I'm willing to be a lonely widow who has nothing and lives a destitute life, but you guys, you don't need to ruin your lives by hanging out with me. So she cares about them, right? She cares about her daughters. But then we find out that Ruth, one of the two daughters, cares about her mom just as much, or maybe even more. So Ruth has a desire to watch out for her mom. So let's now move to that's kind of get us caught up to chapter 3. Naomi and Ruth don't have social status, but that doesn't mean they're powerless. In Ruth chapter 3, we're going to read verses 1 through 13. One day, Ruth's mother-in-law, Naomi, said to her, my daughter, I must find a home for you where you will be well provided for. Okay, here's that heart that she has for her daughter. So Ruth has come with Naomi. They've gone back to Israel. They've gone back to Bethlehem. They're looking to, okay, how are we going to survive? How are we going to make it? They're just barely getting by. Verse 2, now Boaz, with whose women you have worked, is a relative of ours. Tonight he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. And we've already read up to this point, by the way. So in chapter 2, remember we read about that Ruth did gleaning in Boaz's field, right? Remember that. Okay, so now we're moving ahead. And so she's giving advice to Ruth. Verse 3, wash, put on perfume, get dressed in your best clothes. They're scheming here. Then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know that you are there until he has finished eating and drinking. So when he's really not paying attention, he's enjoying himself, so kind of sneak in there. When he lies down, note the place where he's lying, then go and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do. This is Ruth's response to her mother. I will do whatever you say, Ruth answered. So she went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law told her to do. When Boaz had finished eating and drinking and was in good spirits, he went over to lie down at the far end of the grain pile. Ruth approached, quietly uncovered his feet, and lay down. In the middle of the night, something startled the man. He turned, and there was a woman laying at his feet. Who are you? He asked. I am your servant Ruth, she said. Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a guardian redeemer. This is the word goel. We introduced this last week. So a special member of the family who's to look out for the extended family if there's been tragedy. Verse 10, the Lord bless you, my daughter, he replied. This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. All the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character. Although it is true that I am a guardian redeemer of our family, there is another who's more closely related than I. Stay here for the night, and in the morning, if he wants to do his duty as your guardian redeemer, good, let him redeem you. But if he is not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lie here until morning. All right. So we got a romance budding here. We got the beginning of a marriage. A marriage proposal really is what's happening here, right? But it's all under the auspices. It's all under the understanding that these two women are looking for someone to come in as a protector, as a provider for them. They need somebody to do that for them. So they're looking, according to the law, for a guardian, for a kinsman redeemer, someone who's a close relative who will come in and help them in their dire situation, right? So Ruth has this great idea. Naomi has this great idea, and she's already kind of been putting the pieces together here, and she's got this scheme in mind, and they work together on this as a team. And we see as they do this, and as they're working out all of this plan, I don't mean scheme in a bad way. I don't mean any sort of bad connotation. Sometimes we think there's something bad there. No, there's nothing. This is great. This is being smart. This is being wise. This is using the power that you have. So let's look at these two ladies now from the story that we've read. And there's two secret powers that each of them have, right? There's two quiet just things you wouldn't necessarily right away think of, right? They're in a subordinate position that no one would think of these ladies as powerful, but they have power. They do. And so let's look at Naomi, the two that she has, and then we'll look at Ruth, the two that she has. So Naomi, the first power that we see that she has, and if you're filling in your blanks, this is the first one, it's just wisdom. Naomi brings wisdom to the team that is Naomi and Ruth. They've banded together. They've committed to each other. They're going to help each other, and they're going to figure out life because life's been hard on them. They're almost in an impossible situation, but they're going to figure out how to overcome. They're going to do it together, and they're going to use the power that they have. And the first power that they had is Naomi's wisdom. And so with Naomi's wisdom, I think of King Solomon. Right? The wisest man ever to live. And God told King Solomon, before he took over ruling the Israelite people, he said, I want to give you a gift. God told him, I want to give whatever you ask for, I'm going to give it to you. Wow. What would you ask for? God said that to you. Anything you want. Because God can do anything, can't he? What would you pick? Solomon picked wisdom. Why would you pick that? Solomon knew, he was obviously had a little wisdom already. Because if you're a wise person, you're going to do well. Life's going to work out a lot better for you. I mean, you want to be rich? Be wise first, and you'll get rich. You want to have power? You want to have influence? You want people to like you? Be wise first. Learn how to get along with other people. Learn how to cultivate influence and relationships, right? So Solomon was smart. He said, I want wisdom, right? Now, why is that so significant other than we all agree, yeah, that's a good thing to choose? Well, because usually what does wisdom require so Solomon got a shortcut to wisdom. What is the normal way to get wisdom? You gotta live life. You gotta have some failures. You gotta make some mistakes. You gotta figure out how to pick yourself out and dig yourself out of some holes in life. Have any of you made some big mistakes? Have you had to kind of get out of that hole and try to survive your own foolishness? Trey and I were talking about some people just have to learn the hard way, right? They're not going to learn until they try it themselves. They know it's not going to work, but they try it anyway, and then they learn the hard way, right? So now you gain wisdom from that. But Solomon bypasses all of that. He's just wise, right? So that's what Naomi has, but Naomi didn't learn it the easy way. She did learn it the hard way. She's old. She's a senior. She has wisdom. So she's able to bring that wisdom into the picture, onto the team. And we need to be reminded, I love that we're a diverse church in many different aspects. And one of those diverse diverse aspects of our church is that we have young and old. And we have to appreciate the wisdom of the seniors that are around us. We have to appreciate it if our parents are still involved in our lives and grandparents, what they can share with us and take advantage of that because that's power. And by the way, those of you who have the power of wisdom, don't forget you have power, even though you may not be thinking or you may be underestimating yourself. Naomi also has the power of special knowledge, right? We call this expert knowledge. This could be institutional, this could be cultural. If I go to a company and somebody's been working for that company or for that church for 30 years, they have institutional knowledge, right? If I go to another country and try to help in Mexico or I go on a mission trip to another country, I've learned that there are people there that can help me, even though I have more education and more money and more status. But I need to make friends with people from that culture because they have cultural knowledge that I need because I might actually die. Right? I might do something really dumb and end up in jail or end up dead because I didn't know something really simple that anybody could have told me. So that's cultural knowledge. That's institutional knowledge. When I met Tammy, she told me how to survive her family when we got together for like family reunions. Like, okay, your family's crazy, Tammy. How am I going to survive this, right? So I think she's helping out Caleb today. Like, my family was pretty like Beaver Cleaver and like, oh my goodness, I had no idea. She's like, okay, so she taught me how to survive her family. Like there was all kinds of things I had to learn, right? So those who have been insiders understand those things, and there's certain things you do and you don't do. There's certain things you say and you don't say, right? Maybe in your family it's that way when you get together. So that kind of knowledge is power. You've heard that before, right? Knowledge is power. In Ruth chapter 1, verse 22, looking back, so Naomi returned from Moab, accompanied by Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, arriving in Bethlehem as the barley harvest was beginning. Is that a coincidence? No. Naomi knew this is the right time to come back. This is the first of 3 harvests. They're starting the harvest. There's going to be opportunity to glean. Let's go now. If we're ever going to go back, let's go now. And they get back, and she instructs Ruth, hey, this guy Boaz that you said you were working in his field, stay there. That's good. It's good that he noticed you. Stay there. What is she doing? She's leading. She's guiding with what? With cultural knowledge, institutional knowledge, family knowledge. She knows the customs. She knows this idea of Goel, of a kinsman redeemer. She understands all of this. Ruth doesn't know this. So she's got leadership, she's got power, but she's not thinking that probably. She's just thinking, I'm a failed old lady and I'm a widow and I've got nothing. And no, she's got power and she probably doesn't even realize that. So we need to value the seniors among us and our family and our parents, and we need to value the experts around us. We need to be humble enough to know when there's people around us that know something more than I do in an area of life that could benefit me. So what should I do? Shut up and listen. Get good at asking questions. And if I can learn what you're an expert at, that's going to make me a lot more successful in life and probably a lot happier in life, because you're going to know some things that could help me if I would just listen to you. Now, Ruth also has a couple secret powers, so let's talk about those. Ruth has a couple things that she maybe wasn't fully aware of. Number one is she had character. This is called by some people referent power. This is that she had this, and this is mentioned a few times in the passage we've already read, that people noticed, boy, what a great girl this is. Like, yeah, they keep calling her the Moabite, Ruth the Moabite, right? Everyone knows she's a foreigner. Okay, we got that. But what kind of person is she? What's the content of her character? That's what I want to know. And so they watch her and like, oh, she's hardworking. Oh, she's honoring her mom all the time. She's respectful. She's following our customs. She's making the effort to learn our language and our customs. And man, what a great girl. They're getting to know her and that she's got this wonderful character. And what is it doing? It's making her be admired. It's making her be liked. It says in Proverbs 31, it's interesting. Oh, first of all, let me go back. Verse 11 of chapter 3 that we were in. It says, all the people of my town, this is Boaz talking, all the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character. Boaz is saying, everybody knows this to be true. Like this, your reputation is spreading everywhere, that you are a great lady. And by the way, of noble character. You are a woman of noble character. You know what the translation, the actual original Hebrew is? It's the exact same word that is mentioned of Boaz earlier when it says he was a man of status and of greatness. Remember when we talked about that? That Boaz was a great man. Not because he was a great warrior, but just because he was looked up to by society, because he was a man who had power and influence. It's the same word that was used of Gideon, that he was a great warrior. So Gideon was a great warrior. Boaz was a great influential man, but the exact same word here is used of Ruth. But it's translated of her noble character. In other words, what was her great mark on this world, what was known about her more than anything else was her character. And so that's why this book, Ruth, was oftentimes coupled together with Proverbs chapter 31 of what a noble wife is. Again, the same translation of what a noble wife is. And I'm not going to read it. I was going to read it, but I'm running out of time. But you can go back and read in Proverbs 31 what a great woman is like, what the characteristics of a noble woman is like. So I'm just going to finish off this by saying Ruth was admired. She was widely admired, right? This is one of her powers. Her second power, and then we'll wrap up, is that she's a young single woman. She's got this secret power, this quiet power of simply being a young single woman. Now let's be honest. Let's be real, right? That in most cultures and most times, being a young single woman is to your benefit, ladies, all right? And so if you're looking for a husband and you already have great character and you're pretty and you're available and you're not married yet, like, okay, you've got some bargaining power here. You get to make some choices. And you might think, well, back in those days, Ruth didn't get to make any choices. Guess what? As I read it, she had some choices. If we go back to verse 10, all right, verse 10, Boaz says, you have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. He's reminding her, you have the power to probably make a choice here of a number of different men. You can pick, you got your pick of a bunch of guys that would love to marry you. And your kindness in choosing me, he's just blown away by that. He wants to marry her, and he's amazed that she would choose him. So that's power. She has, and so sometimes we forget that. We think that Boaz had all the power, but I know in my marriage, sometimes like I'm powerless to my wife, right? Like if she wants something and she knows how she could get that, right? There's certain things that wives and women can do to influence whether it's their husband or their dad. And some of you have daughters that got dads tied around their little fingers, wrapped around their little fingers. But this is something we need to be reminded, like it's again, not an all or nothing thing, that everybody has some power that they can leverage and use for some purpose, whether good or bad. Genesis 2, verse 20, just a reminder in that verse, God brings Eve to Adam because in this passage, Adam realizes he needs a wife. And Boaz realizes he needs a wife. He needs someone to complement him, someone to be his partner in life and to work together with him. And that's what Boaz. So Boaz has this great need. And Ruth is offering to meet that need and be his companion, his wife, and to start a family with him. So let's say that Ruth also is widely desired. Ruth is both. We've learned her powers are widely admired and widely desired. That's power. Ruth had power, all right? So let's just ask this question. You realize, okay, I'm not the big kahuna. I'm not the president. I'm not the boss. I'm not the boss man. But I do have power. And you can think of different scenarios, different places in life where you realize, okay, I'm not powerless. I do have power. The next question is, how am I using that power? So Ruth chooses to use her power to benefit her mother-in-law. Knowing her mother-in-law, in other words, she's not going to run after some guy and say goodbye to her mother-in-law. She's already made a commitment to her mother-in-law. So she's going to choose the Goel. She's going to choose someone who's going to take them both as a package deal. Her loyalty is to her mom, and that helps influence who she's going to marry, and she makes that choice. She uses her power because she's thinking of her mom, right? Not just thinking of herself. And we think opposite too. We see that Naomi is using her power of knowledge and wisdom to help her daughter-in-law. We have those same choices when we realize we have power. Am I going to help people who God has put in my life, family, friends, those who I'm loyal to and they're loyal to me, or am I going to just use it for my own selfish purposes? This is always the juxtaposition. This is always the crossroads. It's always the opportunity to go one way or the other, is to realize I've got some power. I've got something that I didn't realize I had, and how am I going to cash it in? What am I going to spend it on? I'm not just going to let it disappear. I mean, hey, I've got some power. I've got some currency. Let's spend it. And let's spend it on somebody else. Let's lift them up from their position. Let's help them out if they're going through a hard time. Let's use it to maybe share your faith with somebody. Maybe you've got some currency God's given you, and now this gives you a platform to share your faith because this person doesn't know Christ. So let's do that. Let's cash it in so that they can know, and if they trust me, they respect me, I've got some power in their life, I'm going to use that to share the truth with them or to help them, not just to use it for myself. And so that's, for me, the simple application of this is to remember that all of us, whether you feel like you're significant, you have status or not, I mean, like some people spend their whole life trying to get to that spot, right? They want that position. They want that executive position and to be known as the boss and known as the man, the guy with the power. There's a lot of people that are just power hungry. And the people that I see that are just that driven and all they care about is the power, you know what I find is usually if they get there, they're going to use that for themselves. They're only thinking of, how is that going to serve me? But if we're less concerned about whether we're gaining power and we're more concerned about what power has God given to me? And we're looking around and asking the questions, God, are there people in my life who respect me? Or God, are there people here that I have influence with them? And if you are reminded by God that you have opportunities to influence others that are looking up to you, use that for Him. Use that for them, not for yourself. And it's my vision, it's my hope, it's my goal that all of us are being intentional about that. I use the word oikos. You've got like your own oikos, your own household of people within your sphere of influence who, if you're intentional about it, they're looking to you for leadership. They're looking to you for answers in life and for help in life. And you and I have opportunities in a unique way to reach them and to connect with them and to help them and to share the truth with them. And you can do that with your oikos in a way that I can't. Like you can try to get them to come to church and say, hey, come listen to my pastor preach. Maybe they'll come, maybe they won't, right? But they'll listen to you. And they'll probably get more out of you sharing the truth with them and being honest with them and loving them than even coming and hearing a pastor preach at them, right? So let's be thinking, who has God put in your life? Who do you have power with? And how are you cashing that in with them? Let's pray. God, thank you for the reminder that we don't have to feel like we're in charge and the boss, that we could be like Naomi and Ruth and realize, God, we all have some power in this world. And God, I just pray that you would help me to be first to set that example, to reach out to those around me who, God, you've given me some influence in their lives. God, help me to be bold. Help us to be bold. Help us to be sacrificial. God, help us not to be selfish, but to be quick to help others with what you've given to us. We pray these things. In Jesus' name, amen.